Are we recording now?
Recording and
We are on. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting of the Mahone Bay Town Council. Contrary to what you see on the screen, you can't always believe what you read. I am not Councillor Joseph Feeney. Councillor Feeney is sharing with Councillor Carver. Nevertheless, we will endeavor to conduct this meeting in a fairly succinct manner, and we'll get to the topic directly. In the meantime, as always, we are gathered tonight in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, current, and future home of the Mi'kmaq people. And we gather with the intent of the friendship treaties, and we do so in the sense of cooperation with the Mi'kmaq people. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of Mahone Bay Town Council to receive information from the fire department on the new ladder fire truck that is being proposed for consideration. Council, you have an agenda that was emailed to you. What is your wish? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Carver. On the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for the fire department members that have joined us tonight. In particular, Chief Eakins, newly re-elected as the supreme leader of the fire department. And Deputy Chief Nick Now is also with them. And we have three other members of the fire department committee. This is the truck committee, isn't it? Yeah. And they will all be contributing, I hope, to this discussion tonight. Before we turn it over to the fire department CEO, did you want to make any comments?
I'll just comment on the structure of the agenda. So we have presentations from the truck committee and then there's a staff report with recommendations. So obviously any questions that you'll have on the presentations, you should ask those questions, and then we'll thank the committee for their presentation. And as to a normal council proceeding, go to the staff report and the recommended motions there. And if any council members want to put them on the floor. So kind of two part to the meeting.
Okay. Well, with that, Chief Eakins, you'd like to get us started?
Nick and Mike went down to Connecticut to look at the truck. They spent a day and a half there going over it, putting it through its paces. They kind of got a report together on the truck. The truck itself, I think, would suit us very well. It's not just, it's what they call an articulating platform. So it allows us to go up and over obstacles like power lines, things like that. So we are got quite a lot of them in town that are obstacles for us. The conventional ladder. And its greatest capability is that it has actually got low grade capability, so we could sit at the side of the road, reach down an embankment. There's been 4 or 5 instances in the last 3 or 4 years where that would have been useful to rescue them. Nick.
Just before Deputy Chief Now begins, can the folks at home see our screen?
Yeah, so this will come up as the Mahone Bay screen. I'll share. So
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so there's going to be 2 different presentations. One will be about the truck itself, and usefulness, the budgetary part of it, and then there'll be a whole condition report on what we did after we planned to look at it. So the goal of our committee originally was to examine different types of aerial truck apparatus, what's best suited for the home day. Once the types are determined, research all costs involved in training and equipment required. Intentions are to purchase a pumper ladder truck, which will serve as both a ladder and a pumper, to replace / sell our pumper one truck, which is a 2009, to maintain further capabilities, but still maintain our underwriter standards. So the chosen truck we picked was a Bronto. Most of these pictures are the one that we are proposing. Some of the other ones are stock pictures from the internet. Okay. So these are just some of the pictures of the actual truck that we're proposing to buy. A couple pictures over here. There will be more later. So the 2006 E1 Bronto Skylift, the 2,000 gallon minute pump, and 300 gallons of water. Our current truck that we are talking about replacing is a 1,250 gallon minute pump with 500 gallons of water. So we do lose 500 gallons of water, but we also gain 100-foot articulating boom. These are the particulars of the truck. It's a Detroit series engine, 515 horsepower, Allison automatic transmission, the water pump you see there, the monitor on the bucket for doing aerial attacks, 3 discharge ports, same as a basic pumper. It's got lots of scene lighting on it, and the bucket can hold 1,200 pounds and has a wheelchair opening as well. So this is the present ones available. The 21,000 kilometers on it. The truck overall has 2,400 hours. The ladder itself has 800 and some odd hours on it. And as Dennis explained last night in our meeting, Lunenburg's truck is a 2017 and it has 400 hours. So there's not been a huge amount of use on this truck. There is a bit of history behind it of why they got this truck, but yeah. Back to this again, the asking price was $195 US. So we did do some research on what the cost would be to get it here and get it in service. So cost to get it in service, shipping, we had an original cost of $20,000. We have since then done some more research and we can get it significantly cheaper. The broker who's selling this is willing to drive it from Cromwell in Connecticut to the border for $2,500 US. And then we would send 2 of our guys to the border and drive it back to our area. So we're cutting a lot of costs out there. The import fees originally were at $45,000. Dylan may be able to speak more because I know he was going to look into it a little bit more. We were told when we went down that seemed very high. So these numbers are way higher than what we're actually going to see in the end. To do the decals is about $5,000, and then we'll need a Nova Scotia MVI, which is $500. So yearly cost of ownership. So what's going to cost us extra to own a more capable piece of apparatus? It's going to be $3,500 a year plus travel to have the ladder itself inspected to maintain its certification. The travel cost would be shared with other departments. The Valley brings the same company down to do all of their ladder trucks. So we would share it between them. There's 4 up there now, and then us. And they just come from Quebec. When I spoke to Technofuel, which is the company that does it out of Quebec, they said if we were to do it on our own, it would be about $5,000 without anybody else involved. Typical fluid filter changes, $600. Pump testing, $800. Those 2 costs are the same with every truck we have in our haul, pretty much. So it is an older truck. So there's some upgrades we'd like to do on the truck to upgrade all the lighting to LEDs from halogens, energy saving, more visibility, all these things. So you're looking at $50,000 to do those upgrades. Now, these, I have a firm price now for the LED lighting upgrade, which is 45, and then he estimated about $4,500 for the, or $4,500 for the VA seats. The current seats that are in it are very difficult to get your VA strapped in and get out of the vehicle. They'll be catching up. It's like a cable system. It's very cumbersome.
What does VA stand for? Sorry.
Breathing apparatus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that means if we, seats would be similar to what we get in our number one now. Or number three now.
Then they'll be the same as the rescue number 6.
Yeah.
Well, then we get upgraded.
When they get upgraded, right now, they're the same as what the other one is.
Number 1. Yeah.
Hard that.
So training requirements, ladders off course can be taken online. It just talks about truck placement and precautions and uses. It's an online course anyone can take online. Pump operates the same way as any other pumpers. All of our guys are pretty much trained on doing that as it is. The ladder use will just basically require stick time on getting used to using it. Me and Mike were down there. I spent 20-25 minutes on it each, and we were running it like no problem. And we do have the company Firestar who comes down every year to do training for us, and they will do a specific aerial operations course for us this year. So if in the event that we have it at a fire and for maintenance and whatnot afterwards, so for after action procedures, if the boom is exposed to heavy smoke, just need to be cleaned with Varsol, re-grease the unit, takes about 4 hours to do so. More things for our guys and for what you guys are worried about, but it's all part of our main presentation here. So the total cost of purchase, this is what you guys will care about. Total cost of the truck itself was 266 Canadian at the time that we did this presentation up. The upgrades are 55,000, so they'll be 50,000 now. Import fees were 45. Again, I'm unsure, it will be less than that. And the shipping costs will be probably around $6,000 to $7,000 by the time we send our guys down there and come back. Total cost of purchase was $386,000 Canadian. The proposed truck that we're looking to sell, we had a representative of the company that builds that truck. They did an unofficial estimate on us what they think the value of it would be. And they said around $225,000. We'd probably have it sell very quickly. He said you could put it at 250, but you might scare some of those people that were right on the cusp of getting, purchase a truck at that price point away to not being interested. Questions?
Does it rescue cats?
Yeah. It certainly can.
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Yep.
If I may. What was the reason that the truck was used so little?
So yeah, this truck was purchased brand new by Cromwell Fire Department. They were a volunteer fire service until recently, where they've recently converted to a combined service. So they have some paid guys and they have some volunteer guys. The chief at the time the truck was purchased thought it was pretty and liked it, so they bought it. This community is all single level living houses. It was not an apparatus that should have been bought for that area. Way too big, and they didn't have any need for the capabilities of it, so it just never got used. In 2013, they bought a 78-foot straight stick truck, which is more suited to their needs. And this kind of got put second line. And in the last couple of years, they finally convinced the chief that bought this, who is now on the commission, that this is surplus. We need to sell it. So that's where they're at.
So I can anticipate higher buildings being built,
Mhm.
more higher buildings being
Yeah.
built locally. So right now, where is the closest aerial truck to here?
The closest one to us would be Lunenburg. Theirs is a 78-foot straight stick. It's a light duty ladder. So basically, with most of the houses in Mahone Bay, they have probably 20 to 30 feet of lawn in front of their house. Not Main Street, but most places. Then even their ladder won't reach to those, so we would have to call Bridgewater. They could bring their 100-foot stick in. So they would be closest that would be for most buildings. Lunenburgs can't quite get to the top of the churches. It's a useful truck for them. It just, in our area, a truck like that wouldn't work for us. Given power lines where they are and setbacks, you have to be so far from the building.
That you mentioned the time needed, for example, for the cleaning and afterwards of 4 hours.
Yep.
And I'm just curious about whether the sense of personnel being adequate to the training, the maintenance, and so on.
Yeah,
But
I
it's-
think we're gonna have a whole lot of, as far as training, there really isn't a lot different with this truck. It's super easy to use. It's just one of those things that you need to use it to learn it. You know, you can't expect to watch a video and learn how to know how to operate it. Driving it is just like driving any of our other trucks. It's a little bit longer than our new truck is gonna be, but not, it's 3 feet longer than our new truck. As far as maintenance goes, again, mostly the same. The only thing they've added is we're gonna have to do a yearly testing on the ladder. And if it gets into heavy smoke, then we'll have to
extra
do an extra Varsol cleaning, but if any of our trucks get into it, we're gonna have to really do a thorough cleaning, so.
Wanted to speak on that as well. I think we also discussed that we have a set crew that when you run that truck, that crew is there designated to clean that truck if we're in heavy snow.
Mhm. Great.
So,
Thank you.
no problem.
What's the, if you were to go to the market to buy it, what's it gonna cost?
3 million,
3 million?
new one of these is $3 million.
So after the taxes and everything else are cleaned up, this $3 million version truck is gonna cost us 200,000?
Right now, it's 360 for selling the other truck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before selling the other.
Yeah.
Is there, do I hear hesitation in your voice about selling the other truck?
Oh, no, we want
That's
it,
gone,
we want it.
okay. What's the lifespan of the truck? This is 2006.
2006, so, to be considered a frontline pumper, you got 20 years for the underwriters to be considered a frontline pumper. So they just did a recent, this certification on it, just as we were, expressing interest in the truck, they did the ladder certification and a fresh pump cert. So now this thing is good for extra time, so we're good to 2031 before we need to be another pumper purchased to keep us to have our 2 pumpers for the underwriters. Now, the ladders part, that's as good as long as it passes inspections. Yeah, I mean, Liverpool's truck is like 40 years old. And if anyone knows anything about Windsor, they've seen the trucks that Windsor had before they just bought this new one. They had an old ladder truck from New York, which I think is still at a smaller department somewhere else. And they had an old snorkel. Well, that was early 80s.
These old engines in the truck.
Yeah.
And we do with things like an oil analysis in part of the inspection before we buy it, or?
We didn't do like an oil analysis or anything like that. We spoke with the mechanic because they have their own dedicated mechanic and he's been working with this truck since they had it new. Mike was a certified head mechanic and he was down there with us. He went over the truck and he can speak to it more than I can, but we didn't find anything even close to alarming with the truck.
So no qualms whatsoever
No,
for this.
there's no, like the usual you're checking for is blow by, wheels blown.
Yeah.
It's just mechanical maintenance on the engine itself, so it looked spotless, like there wasn't any leaks, there was no blow by, motor sounded good. I mean, it was strong. It's a 515 horsepower Detroit, so you're at your top of your peak for horsepower on those engines, so.
Thank you. Councilor Hurley, did you have a question?
I'm thinking of one up.
Councilor Bean?
Deputy Chief, the cadence of the divestiture of the bumper we have today, we're still gonna need to keep that until the new bumper arrives, I assume.
Yes.
So can you just refresh our memories on the delivery expectations on the delivery of the quote unquote new bumper?
So this ladder truck,
No, the new
the new one that's
the
still,
new chassis being,
the new chassis arrived. So they're still saying they're on schedule for December 2024 for the new pumper. to
December
arrive.
2020. So a divestiture of the existing primary pumper wouldn't really occur until 2025.
Nope, we have two. So the one that new truck is replacing is the 2003 Freightliner,
Okay,
and this is gonna be replacing the 2009 Rosenbauer
so we would be able to divest this truck immediately.
immediately, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as the aerial truck was put into
Mhm.
service,
Yeah.
as soon as they were confident that it was, you know,
And what's the vintage of the vehicle we're divesting?
2009.
2009.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's
as,
three-
so as it relates to having the the second frontline pumper, we would be giving up 3 years of replacement time.
We gained 3 years because of the recertification of the,
So even,
we're even.
fair enough.
Because I think pumper one runs out in 28. You figured?
Yeah.
28 or 29,
So we think that it'll be 2031 for
31 before we.
need to buy another pumper.
So I guess we've been talking with the use case.
Mhm.
I think it's pretty obvious with church steeples and 4-story seniors cares facilities and new MDUs. I mean, there's seen a use case, but my understanding is that the department has had situations where we've had cars like off into the water.
Yeah.
Where we've had in the last maybe 2 years. I think, Richard, you mentioned that story where it was really difficult to get to it, and this solves that problem
So
as
we can
well.
go, I don't have the picture, like, I have other pictures on my computer, but this thing can go 25 feet below grade. So if the truck's parked in the street, it can go 25 feet below where it's parked. So it really can be all along the shoreline there, like there was one recent, last year, I think it was. The lady went down over,
The bank there.
yeah, and, I mean, God love her, she was 80-some years old, and we offered her a ladder, and she said, nope, she was going up. High-heeled rubber boots, and up so she went.
Councilor Trevor, or you?
I thought there was another question.
Well,
over
he
there.
came in after.
Oh, good,
Okay,
okay.
prepare. So we'll let you go and then we'll talk to Councilor Wilson.
Um, will this result in more calls to you because of the different abilities of this truck?
It may bring in some extra mutual aid calls for departments that are around us that don't have a ladder that will require one. I can't see a lot more, but there may be some. We'll be probably going to structure fires in Martins River, Chester areas, I would say. But we go to those anyway. So, which is maybe just more equipment rather than just one pumper or something like that.
Yeah, there's a major fire, multi-unit.
Yeah.
Fire in Bridgewater, for example, even though they have equipment, they're quite likely.
Oh,
to
chance,
call
if there's a big fire in Bridgewater, and they're gonna call any ladder they can get their hands on. Same with church fire, we had Windsor, Kentville, all those trucks were all down here for that big church fire. So we pulled them all over to get out. For numbers, I couldn't even guess. Cause I couldn't, it may bring more, it may just stay very close to the same.
Had mentioned about the use of where the nearest other ladders were. If we have a major fire, chances are we're probably calling those other ladders off. We have our own, but it'll just give us a quick start on the.
Even more so the firefighting capabilities of this truck is the rescue capabilities. So with a bucket, and this is a senior town, there's a lot of people that aren't gonna be able to climb down a regular, like a straight stick. We can get them out of the window into this bucket, take the bucket, they can walk off the bucket, we can go back and get someone else. If it's a straight stick, you either have to walk them down the ladder or get them over and you can get the ladder about 6 feet off the ground, or you have to try to, get them off the,
Never mind age.
yeah,
Um,
size.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just convenient for like the nursing home. Now, whether there's places or not that we can get the bucket right into the nursing home where we can wheel someone into it. That's to be determined, but the capabilities are there that it can fit a wheelchair right in the basket.
councilors already had access to the presentations, but the second one, if you did, I
Yeah.
have the questions all followed because there was budgetary stuff and details, but.
Yeah.
If you want to see some of these things, they do have good visuals,
Yeah.
maybe you can see them on your own.
And I think Dylan will probably talk to you more in the budgetary. Did you want me to talk about how this will change what our next truck purchase will be, or did you want?
So it is covered in there. The only thing is there is an error because based on what I wrote down from our conversation, the truck purchase that replaces this one will lose, that won't be a new ladder truck.
Yes.
Meaning that truck will be dependent on keeping this old one around as a ladder truck. And eventually we'll lose that capacity at some point. I didn't budget for the next ladder
20
truck.
years,
Yeah, so that's the only thing I missed that.
Yeah.
detail.
Councilor Wilson.
Well, which leads to my question, which is, I was a bit concerned that this thing kind of came out of left field. Although I suppose we all should have been thinking about the fact that we do have tall buildings. And the fact that we don't have any money to pay for it. So those questions are front and foremost. But what I think is more important going forward is, and I don't know if this is even possible, but I'm wondering if the department could prepare a kind of a 5 to 8 year capital plan that talks to when we need what.
That's in your attachments.
Oh, I didn't get to that.
But yeah, we've got a 20-year now. The only thing that it's missing is about at year 20, give or take, depending on how well this holds up. We will need to buy either another used or probably $5 million by 2050, whatever the year is. So that's a concerning point, but.
I just wondered for the benefit of the public who are watching, whether we could just describe the insurance requirements. So people are aware of why there has to be this upgrading in the fleet.
Yeah, well, certainly the first time pumper insurance requirements, we can speak to that. I mean, ultimately, I haven't had any conversation about the ladder truck capacity specifically influencing insurance, but in terms of, our department counting as providing adequate service, they have to have a first out pumper, main pumper truck that is less than 20 years old, or potentially, if recertified, I guess 25 years.
Yeah.
That first out pumper will be the one that will arrive by Christmas time. That will be the first out pumper for the next 20 years. So that's what that vehicle covers off. And from an insurance perspective, that's the requirement. That and in town, proximity to the hydrant system also has a relevance to home insurance.
How will it affect the insurance generation of the ladder truck? I don't know the exact effect it will have. It does give you a better rating. I'm not sure how much, or I don't know how those numbers work, but I know it does increase your rating, give you a better rating. Yeah, so did you want me to talk about the changing of if we don't buy or we do buy this for what a new truck or next truck?
Well, that's,
Yeah,
we'll get
we can
to
do that
Put
later.
it up on the screen when we get to that, because it is in the attachments. But if you want to show any of your other presentation, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, people may have checked out all that on the phone, but the visuals are compelling. I think one thing that they were pointing out to me is if you're fighting a fire, say at the top floor of the new long-term care facility, it's one thing to try to angle water up to it, but it's another thing to be able to actually take the water up and put it directly into the window that way. So that seems like it would make a huge difference to a fire internally to a building like that.
This is the condition for what we did, so we broke it down into different things and what we saw when we were looking at it. So for the chassis, frame was rust free, very low kilometers and hours. All the airlines are already cold with their lines because it's coming from Connecticut. Cabs free of rust, excellent shape. Inside the seats have no tears or rips, and the seats look like brand new in that truck. And it's very rare you see that. Tires have plenty of life left in them, and I think Mike was talking mechanic, and the brakes were 6 months old.
All 7 months now.
7 months of put new brakes on it, so.
Yeah.
There's some pictures of the chassis. It's a little dirty, but the frame's still shiny. It's kind of impressive, actually. That's water from when we were pumping, not some crazy fluid that you should be worried about. The engine. Very clean. So the body, no major rust, no major damage, minor scratches, obviously. There is some surface rust around some of the slam doors, which are the doors that you slam shut, because it's an aluminum body and the handles are steel. Similar metals created some corrosion. That repair of that is included in the upfit chart prices that we had gotten. Pump functions as it should, show no sign of corrosion with a fresh pump test. Body, so this is some of the pictures of the corrosion that we found. Well, this will all be repaired with the upfit. So the guy that's doing the upgrading to the LEDs, he's gonna do this. It's just surface rust, because basically all I have to do is sand it off. So this is the truck, we've got the ladder up there, got water flowing through the tip here, but just the picture doesn't really show it right there, but. Doors open inside. 100 feet. Can go 100 feet.
Every little kid in town.
Yeah.
Fire prevention. Yeah. Ride in the bucket.
I can tell you,
Ask you about Michael Mother.
being left in the bucket, you don't want to climb down that. far.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that question, where it's controlled from in the bucket, I
It
assume?
can be controlled from the rear of the truck on the turntable or in the bucket.
4 joysticks.
Now, if you pick me up in my wheelchair 10 years from now,
Mhm.
I presume you have to then retract and drop the whole thing down from the.
Yeah, so basically we just turn around and then lower it down and put you out, kick you out of the bucket and go back.
So, I mean, the department and the truck committee has had tremendous success in the last 2 years. With scouring North America really in searching for really significantly undervalued assets.
Yep.
And so if you think about the rescue truck that came from British Columbia, and then you think about this truck at these price points relative to the procurement of a brand new vehicle, they're just worlds apart on cost. So I guess fundamentally, when we're looking at the increased functionality of the ladder for similar pumping life curves, I think that's true, isn't it? That
Yeah.
the life of the pumping function as it relates to the underwriters on this truck and the existing truck we're going to divest is similar. It's the same. So you're really exchanging functionality.
Yeah,
You're not exchanging.
so this truck can do everything that truck can do. Plus,
Mhm,
I can do this, but I can do it better kind of thing.
mhm.
It's got the same hose on it, it'll carry highball hose, it'll carry attack lines. The pump on this is actually a 2,000 gallon minute pump, which is significantly bigger than the one that's on the current truck we are going to replace it. Yeah, but I mean, as far as functionality, it's all the same, it's just that we now have that extra rescue capability and the aerial and firefighting capabilities as well.
Those import costs still must just be the HST order, isn't it?
Yeah, and so we should get a couple of outstanding questions to be answered in terms of, we do net back all the
All
federal
the federal.
HST.
Yeah.
So that it should be recoverable.
Mhm.
I put really conservative numbers in the staff report, because we don't have those questions answered, but as with any time we set a budget, hopefully it's gonna come in under that in the end. We just wanna make sure, it's not unrealistic, so, yeah. I think there's a couple of reasons to think we'll come in under, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Subject matter expert on the divestiture, if you give evaluation, you think it's real, like a real hard
So-
number?
The number that I got was from Rocky Mountain Phoenix. He said if we wanted the next full assessment, he would come do one, he just had to pay it.
Mhm.
But he was fairly confident, he wrote a letter, I think That's what the Dylan.
Yeah, so those numbers are based on that external estimate. I mean, again, obviously, you know, until you go out and try it, you don't know. But,
Yeah, I spoke to him and he was fairly confident. But no issue getting that for it.
And the thing is, right now, it still has some years left as the first out pumper, so there are small departments that.
So what he's saying is a lot of people are doing now, especially, he says this is probably the best time to sell a used truck. Because 3-year wait times for new ones, cost of new ones, and so now departments are buying trucks with some life left in them to bridge that extra gap it's taking them to get the new one.
Even Nick spoke, there's people out there right now that are selling fire trucks to have a date set for when their new truck shows up, that's when this truck will be released. So.
Yeah, I mean, as far as selling the other one, you could list it today. And if you get a buyer, you say, yep, sure, yours, when this is put in service.
And when is our option to acquire this vehicle? When does that end? How long?
I see.
We need to make a more formal commitment this month.
Yes, although I mean, just because that ends doesn't mean they have another buyer the next day. But given we've gone to the trouble of reserving it and now putting all this effort in visiting and doing this, it would be good to make a decision. by the Wednesday.
If we were, not wanting to prejudge council's deliberations, but if we were able to, are we able to acquire on April 1st based on a down payment now? Could we consummate this in the next?
I imagine we could work that out. I haven't put that question to the broker, but I mean, if we've made the agreement and we're just trying not to have to realize the cost until next fiscal year, they could probably work out something, but we'd have to look at that, yeah.
Obviously.
When you think at the end of the day, it probably doesn't make too much difference in the sense of, but it's a cash flow question. Waiting until after the next tax billing goes out makes more of a difference than anything for cash flow. But again, we can talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not trying to influence any decision, but they did have other people interested. There was another department that was called, when we were there, they actually responded. Come go ahead and said, don't come yet. You want this? So the boom, no corrosion, very good shape. All hydraulic lines and cylinders are in good shape, no leaks. Boom functions as it should. With a fresh certification, I do have the full report. It's 168 pages. Anyone wants to read it? Outriggers are free of corrosion, all well greased. All the grease points were greased as they should be. There was no dry movement of the truck.
How long have they owned it again?
They had it since new 2006.
2006.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's full reach. 100 feet.
Well, I got up in the bucket and let go of the controls and it was at 100 feet, it's very touchy. And it's a different feeling. If you're not used to it, wasn't used to it. You wake up in a hurry.
So on the front here, it's hard to see in this picture. This program was giving me a problem when I was making this sizing for pictures, but the monitor is right there. So it's the big deluge gun that you'll see mounted on top of some of our trucks. It's called the monitor guns.
And Kelly had asked the question about coming down, that's how you come down.
The ladder's there on the side and it runs up the other side.
And Richard and I were having a conversation a while ago now, and we were talking about, he was sharing with me some of the challenges of fighting a potential fire, say on the 4th story of the Quinlan, based on where the parking lot's organized and how would you get there? Like where would you park relative to getting there? And so with our existing equipment, like what do? We just wait for Bridgewater?
If we need a ladder truck, then we are waiting for someone to get there. The Quinlan is very unique in the fact that you can't get around it. So again, we haven't physically taken a truck down there, but if the parking lot at the barn was clear, I think we could be able to back the truck in there and reach through. up to the patio that's there, which if people are trapped on that floor, that's where they're going. And as for the rest of the building, there's really no access around it, so it's gonna be ground level work.
So part of your training, should you get this vehicle, will you be going around to spots where you think there may be challenges fitting it in as part of your training?
That'll be all part of our pre-planning, and so we can get out there and say, okay, if we get called here, this is where we need to park this is where we park that. And this is where the water's coming from, because if you're running this on a big fire, it's using a lot of water.
So a building like the Quinlan that you can't get around, like how do they get how do they get past though for their fire inspections and?
Well, there's no requirement, like you don't have to drive right around your house. So like, as far as that, you could just use ground ladders. If we had to get someone out of the window, we'd do ground ladders. Or we'd have to somehow get inside with this. It's on the 4th floor and the fire's on the 3rd floor, and that 3rd floor is fully, impassable. We could go to the deck there, go on the 4th floor and just go in and get them ourselves. Or whatever floor they might be on. There's so many variables in it that it's hard to, especially that building is a very unique building. But most buildings, like the stairwells, are isolated. So they should be fairly smoke free, but getting to the stairwells is the hard part. But yes, we will be doing pre-planning with the truck. When we had it up there, we had some people had some concerns about being able to go steep grades and whatnot. We took this thing down one of the steepest grades they had in that area, and it was worse than what we have here, and we cleared 2 inches to spare. Yeah, I mean, Bridgewater gets theirs in there, so I think you gotta take certain routes. I know Kentville had their ladder in there as well, the church fire. I think you just gotta take a certain route. You're not going up any of those single lane roads. No, we had this in smaller places than we'd ever see here. We took it into a bunch of multi-unit kind of community kind of things. They're all big little cul-de-sac. 2 of them right next to each other. We went and drove all around those. The cars parked everywhere.
Lane roundabout, we went around. The truck went in one swoop and went right back out, no problem. Not hitting nothing, no major turns. No back monument.
That's another problem solved for you.
We have had Bridgewater's truck out here one morning driving around town and making sure to get around town, and it's a similar sized truck, so didn't encounter any problems then.
What would the maximum height building you would reasonably expect to be able to deal with
100 feet, 6 stories. Get close to that.
6 stories?
Or with a bit of setback,
Yeah, if you can get closer, you can get 6 stories. You can typically, as they say, for a 100-foot stick, you're gonna get 6 stories. Because you gotta be back from the building. Now, when you're in high-rise fires, you're never back 1.5 times the collapse zone of the building, so it's different story when it comes to that, but if you're worried about collapse, you're not worried about getting in there.
So you can, you've measured and everything to make sure it can be housed in the fire station?
Oh, God, yes.
Doors are 16 feet tall
Okay.
and 14
14 wide.
Yeah, 14 wide.
Yeah, we would park this in our drive-through bay. So we just drive in one side.
Discussion about, this is a long way down the road, but if we get a non-aerial bumper by 2031 and retain this, we'll end up with 5 large vehicles. Fortunately, although the boat's still in there, it is big enough to, the station is big enough to do that. So previously, we never would have been able to think to retain a truck
No.
when buying another truck, but we actually could now.
Well, I think, Dylan, what's interesting about that conversation is really around. Like the rescue truck is a truck, but every dollar we spend on the rescue truck, we didn't spend on the pump. Like the way that was facilitated, so. We do have a bit more trucks, but we're having more trucks for a similar price tag. Based on the procurement of the rescue truck and leaving some of the functionality on the rescue truck and not needing to pay for it to get on the pumper.
I think generally is what the long-term
Mm.
shows is, growing capacity over time without a huge increase in the cost.
Mhm.
The challenge is we've never had a sustainable funding stream for buying fire vehicles, in the past. So, even though this doesn't really break the bank, the bank itself does warrant some thought in the budget process.
Like the biggest thing is like if we can get this used one now, the next truck we have to buy doesn't have to be a brand new one. So we get this now with limited access to these trucks. These are very difficult to come by. I was tickled when I found it. But buying this now will give us the personnel moving capability so that when we go to replace our next pumper in 2031, we can go to a custom cab or commercial cab chassis and do like a tandem truck with bigger water capacity and replace the pumper and the tanker at the same time. One truck. And that would be your second pumper, or this would still be your aerial, but you would still have your two frontline pumpers under 20 years old.
Fire or vehicle accident or some other mishap. All you have to do is save one life. And this was worth it. If you didn't have the capacity otherwise to affect the same kind of a rescue.
The big thing for us is even our own personal safety. As you know, like steel roofs are a big thing now. Getting on those when it's slippery, you can't tie off to anything when you're up on a roof putting on a chimney fire. There's nothing to tie off to. Get the skyhook in. But then you got solar panels as well on roofs now. And just being able to have access walking on roofs is very difficult. And minor chimney fires, even if someone's got one of those aluminum roofs that you walk on it, you're destroyed the roof. So like it's just many other options than just major incidents. Even life saving is the big one, but even firefighter safety is not having to climb up on roofs. We're in a basket. We're not falling out of the basket. We can be tied off and work from the edge of the basket, doing ventilation in the roof. It just gives us so much more capabilities and safe ways to do them rather than actually getting up and standing on these roofs. And new construction nowadays is very quick to come unstable. So
I think safety is a big thing. Just as an example, Bill, you probably even know that they were doing the work to put the new air conditioning stuff back into the canteen back there. And the safety guy came along, he said, "You're not going on that roof, they have to bring us started." And he would not let those workers up on that roof to do the work. So that's just an example that, we'd be contending with too, so.
air conditioning guys are not going to use.
It's gonna make the point is that they had to bring it in because they couldn't go on it.
Any other questions?
So I know you got a little bit more, but it's kind of all the same stuff. I don't know if there's any particular things you want to highlight in there or.
I don't have any more. That's the end of the slide.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's the video of it backing down the incline you described.
that's all on my.
Well, I got to see it. But
Yeah,
it was good to see anyway.
yes. Just shows the capabilities that we are not going to have the issues here. And on that note, we took the rescue off the super treatment plant road the other day.
Oh, yeah.
We had 2 inches of clearance. So we figure if the ladder came from the other direction, it would be able to make it up. Ladder's too high. Yeah, we might make it come this way, but
We had the same thing with the larger delivery trucks bringing the panels and everything up. They came from Lunenburg.
Yeah, because I was looking at the slope, the road's flat there in front of that driveway. So you wouldn't be at that, like coming from Mahone Bay, you're going towards Mayor's Cove. You've got that incline going down, so you're working on 2 inclines. So you've got more to worry about with Lunenburg Way, you're coming down, you're flat, and you can make that one incline.
Well, I do appreciate you guys checking that out anyway.
Yeah.
We'll follow up on that.
That's 17%.
18%.
18%.
Yeah, apparently. And anything over 15, they gotta at least try it out and certify and take it to it, so. Yeah, this is the solar
No,
lane.
but I'm thinking about Slicker Lane as well. Is that-
It's not as steep, it has a very difficult corner. Yeah, I'm not sure if Zicker Lane hasn't changed in many years. You guys ever tested out your ability to get up to the top
I
there?
can never remember being up.
I think you would have trouble with that corner.
I think you would back up to the top of that hill and that's where you stay.
Yeah, you might, yeah,
And take houses from there.
On Silver Lane.
Yeah.
as we've talked about, the suitability of taking large deliveries there. If we needed to take our electrical pole deliveries, for example, that truck can't deal with the corners there. It would swing over and hit the house on the corner. So, that's been an issue that we've identified but that Zicker Lane's been that way since before the town was incorporated. That's an old road and it's not a public road. So from that perspective, at least right now, still not a public road. Well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, it was great.
So if there are no further questions, Mr. Mayor, at your convenience, we can move over to the staff report.
Yes,
You
Okay.
folks are welcome to hang around and listen to riveting stuff. by the way.
participate in that piece of the discussion.
So I'll just briefly comment on the staff report and hopefully we can look at it. Essentially, it just, reiterates the context we talked about for the trucks purchase, the immediate thing, which is, it's about 400 to 425 if you're being conservative upfront. I think we'll be under 400, but that, initially we won't have the ability to recover from the sale of the other vehicles, so we need to think of cash flow upfront, but probably the net cost is going to be about $200, so that's great. As far as the larger context, we presented two versions of the capital investment plan. There's a little bit of cleanup, I think, that still come from it, but basically it's an improvement on the capital investment plan that was presented in the budget. In that, we've updated a number of things in there, so that's the appendix, the first of the appendices to the report. One of the things that was updated is just general costing, so there's a few areas where it was, we did this at the beginning of the year in 2023-24, and decisions made thereafter, the purchase of the hover truck eventually came in a little bit more than our budget estimate was, so there's other revisions in there. And then the revisions that Nick alluded to when you shift the replacement timing for the second out pumper truck by 3 years because of this recertification of this vehicle. It does sort of speculate going forward that we'll buy a new version of things, so it leaves off before confronting the cost of buying a new aerial, and I have it down as new aerial, but that's really only the cost that the truck committee had proposed for a new pumper, and that's my mistake, is that that's what we covered earlier, the need to retain the aerial and buy a more conventional pumper. So at the end of this, 20 years out is about when at the latest we would have to grapple with that new aerial purchase, or as Nick pointed out, maybe opportunistically, if another one became available used and we had the opportunity, we probably would replace it with one that was still older but newer than 2006. So maybe 10, 15 years from now, there's an opportunity to buy another used aerial and continue to not make that our certified first out kind of vehicle, so it can be used. But in general, what's presented here is a more updated version of the capital investment plan for fire vehicles. So when we get to the budget, we're always working to improve these. We'll have a better, more complete picture. What it really points to isn't relevant to this purchase, which is, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million of capital purchases in the next 20 years with respect to the fire department's vehicle fleet. And, I think if I shake it may be a bit less, it might be more, depending on whether we find used vehicles, whatever. It's still something we don't really have factored in terms of replacement costs. So buying this vehicle is one question, but ultimately, the report does get into it, and I felt it was necessary to include a little bit of an analysis of, if we're looking at, that magnitude over 20 years, obviously it's not, tomorrow, what would it take to ensure that the rates, was this a regulated service? We actually had direction from council to complete a fire rate study. And this is a sort of a major piece of that, is kind of understanding the long-term capital. And Ashley hasn't had the opportunity yet to get into the fire rate study, but we do hope to provide it by budget. But ultimately, I think it's going to point to the same conclusions that are referenced here, which is that, the rates currently are not sufficient for long-term capital replacement. And, ultimately, there's a lot of ways that that gap can be closed. But we did think it was appropriate, just for context, to say if we're talking about a $5 million investment over that period, we have currently $65,000 that goes into the reserve every year. That's only $25,000 from the tax rate. It's $25,000 from fundraising activities and another $15,000 estimated annual donations. So that $65,000 that goes into the reserve every year would be the current funding stream for capital replacement. And if we say it's $5 million over 20 years, we need $250,000 instead of $65,000. So obviously there's a gap. Making up that $185,000 a year gap on fire rates alone, based on today's assessment, which obviously won't be the assessment 20 years from now, works out, and this is Ashley's the last sheet in here, to a 4.9 cent increase on inside and outside rates over the course of that 20-year period. This is only for vehicles, so obviously, you can't say that costs will stay flat for 20 years in other areas. They won't, but it's still worth putting it in that context. So most of the report just focuses on the need to deal with the cash flow if we're going to make this purchase, as Councilor Feeney mentioned, within the fiscal year. It wasn't budgeted. The end of the year is always the hardest time to deal with a large unbudgeted purchase, because the town, gets most of its operating revenue for the year in April, May, because of the tax billing cycle, and then it's kind of right at the end of our year. So Ashley did advise that, to make an unbudgeted $400,000 purchase at this time, we should have reserve funds to cover it, so that we don't risk any cash flow operations as we approach the end of the year. So that's really where the recommendations here, because first off, the recommendation that the council approve the allocation of $425,000 for the purchase of the aerial truck. So that's, budget allocations, not the net cost, but it's the budget allocation. Second thing was to direct staff to proceed with the proposed aerial truck purchase. There's a lot of details to work out. Hopefully we'll come up with a price that's a little lower. We can certainly make that effort, and we'll see where we end up. And then thirdly, to approve the transfer of funds as needed to cover the purchase of the aerial truck from another reserve. And there's a little asterisk there. The motion should just say from another reserve to the fire equipment reserve to be paid back from the fire equipment reserve when a sufficient balance is received. So basically, if the estimated balance of the fire equipment reserve at the end of this fiscal year was 185,000 change. So, if we're thinking it's going to be 425,000, the remaining balance of that needs to be loaned from another reserve to the fire equipment reserve, so that this purchase can be covered. And then one of the ways that the fire equipment reserve would pay that back would be the proceeds from the sale of the other vehicle, which is typically deposited into a capital reserve anyway. It will just probably go into whichever capital reserve loaned the equipment reserve the money. So from a cash flow perspective, that's the recommendation. But ultimately, staff didn't evaluate the capacity of the vehicle and what it brought to the department. I think these guys have done that, and they're the experts. So we really just focused on the financial analysis of this report. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the 20-year capital investment, the new one. You've got a new pumper tanker in 2028 of 800,000. Then you've also got a new aerial in 30, 31, and 32 of 1.6 million. So that's both the same truck.
Yeah, well, so this is where I think I messed it up, because I was thinking of replacing the tanker capacity that we have now. So that's the 2005 International tanker.
That's what
with
it is.
the
28
tanker.
800,000.
Yeah, so that was the 800,000. And then in 2030, 31, it's over 2 years, because you got to pay the chassis deposit. It's going to be the same thing with the new vehicle like we're dealing with now. So you pay the chassis deposit in 1 year, and then the balance on delivery. And that one was based on a price that was then multiplied to get to what's the future price likely to be? But that was not, it was my mistake, not for a new aerial, that was for a new pumper. So if, as was pointed out here by Nick, that pumper also ends up taking the role of the tanker, and then we also need to consider an aerial replacement down the road. I think you could just as easily say that 800,000 is a used aerial 10 years from now, because probably the one we're getting for 400,000 now is 800,000 10 years from now. So I think it's a little adjustment of the order of things here,
Yeah.
but ultimately, if for 20 years we want to make sure we have the pumping, tanker, and aerial capacities, I think this 5 million is still probably pretty accurate. But obviously, we're not buying a new aerial based on that price. So yeah, there is a little correction to be done there. I think at the end of the day, the point of this is, ahead of budget, we're trying to get a big picture. Yeah, exactly. And now we'll improve that on those details.
Councilor Mead.
And we have a deadline to make some decisions, which I believe is the end of the month. Right?
Well, it's the 26th, the council's next meeting is the 25th, so probably that's the deadline.
So I do think that it'd be worthwhile having a conversation in due course with our friends in Mayor's Cove and that commission. And of course, the citizens of Home Bay, they should know, and we should take this opportunity to reiterate that it's our friends and family in Mayor's Cove and Indian Point and Oakland and Cornwall and Clearland, and who are also very significant contributors to the overall revenue streams for fire. So the town of Home Bay is really only about 50% of the funders for the, and of course, we're only 50% of the beneficiaries as well. So it's been a fruitful partnership within the district. But I do think that, as I understand it, our net of hydrant rate is around 11 cents. With, we always inflate the fire rate because we include hydrants, which we're from a regulatory perspective required to do. But
The report does reference, we're pretty much bang on the same.
It does, and
avenue.
I think Ashwa's done a good job kind of isolating those costs, but we're essentially paying the same rate in Home Bay as we are in all of the rest of the district, and so while we're here today making the decision, we're really doing it on behalf of not only the town of Home Bay, but really around the rest of the communities as well. So while we all benefit together from all the work that the department does, we all have to fund it as well. So I do think that we should avail ourselves of the opportunity to talk to the folks in Mayersville and let them know that, we are going to have modest increases in the fire rate. That's not going to be a surprise to anybody given inflation. But we also have the benefit of very large, substantial increases in assessments as well from those areas in the form of new construction. So while we've had a lot of growth in Mahone Bay, those geographies have had similar robust growth. So the revenue streams to support the fire department, which is generally at this point fixed costs, more money is arriving from those other geographies. I mean, if you drive from here to the district boundaries, there's 4 or 5 houses under construction now that we see. So there is underlying growth that will augment the fire department's revenue streams. We'll just have to figure out how we're going to what the right rate should be to be appropriate to meet these requirements.
And can we have that discussion between now and our council meeting on the end of the month?
Well, I think it's more of notification. I mean, at the end of the day, like the rate increases are something that we want them to support. But they're.
So we're gonna have to have the stated support before council addresses the costing issue.
I don't think we reasonably are going to have a written agreement to an increased rate before next, But I think to let them know that these purchases are being made in their interest, so that when we have the conversation about rates, this is understood.
On that same note, the prices you gave here at the 4.9% increase, are those taking into account the new assessment or the old assessment?
No, like that's based on the current understanding of 2023-24 assessment. So it'll either be an increase in rates or an increase in assessment, and that's not like next year. That's just in order to think about the next 20 years.
there. I think we've done a good job of curtailing our costs, and the department really manages every nickel well. But there is, there is more revenue than we. Next year and the year after that will be more revenue still, and that's not all coming on the back of higher rates. A lot of that's obviously coming from incremental growth.
And because we have a fire rate, I think the main thing is to say that like a separated fire rate like it is in an environment where there is growth is going to remain dedicated to the fire service.
Exactly.
So in the past that we never really had a mechanism to ensure that growth and assessment would result in more money being put aside for fire equipment. But now that there's an isolated rate, like it will do that as long as there's robust growth and assessment.
But I mean, that's the virtue of having that segregated rate. Just the citizens know every nickel that they pay on the fire rate goes to fire protection.
So the other things in the intervening week, if council does want to take a week, is there have been efforts to reach out in terms of, defraying the cost. I believe these guys would have mentioned if they've gotten something committed in writing or anything.
We did, we got a
Okay.
$5,000 donation from,
And did you reach out to MODL?
I haven't, I sent a letter to RPS, and Bob, you getting one.
Yeah, well, and, maybe if you send that, this week, we could even follow it up, just. I don't expect miracles of that regard, but, everything they can do, but that's great to hear you got a donation there.
Councilor Curley.
This is sort of a sideways question, but is the town responsible for financing all the vehicles in the department?
So I mean, ultimately, the buck stops with the town, so the town is responsible. We charge the area rates to outside areas that are supposed to be sufficient. That's where the money's supposed to come from. So it's not as if the town pays everything, the residents of the fire service area and the residents of the town are paying equally at this point. But the town is the one collecting all that money and using it.
Has it ever happened that the fire department itself has, put money towards new equipment?
So that's basically down to the fundraising and donation activities. So I had mentioned that we have this $65,000 a year concept of what goes to the fire equipment reserve. So that's for vehicles and equipment. And that's 25,000 from fundraising activities. So the bingo activities, for example, and then 15,000 is estimated donation. So in the past, it's been more common, nothing was necessarily remitted to the town from those fundraising activities. And then when there was a purchase, then money could be remitted to the town on the spot. I think, ultimately, the sustainability of that long-term fundraising effort is something the town needs to keep tabs on. And quite possibly, there is an opportunity for more than $25,000 a year to be contributed from fundraising activities. But I also know when we agreed to the 25,000, it was coming right off of COVID and a concern over how quickly the fundraising activities would bounce back. Yeah.
So I think that's an important piece again for the public to know
In
about that shared.
And I think it's good to emphasize, instead of saying, it's a contribution to this vehicle purchase, it's a contribution towards that $5 million that are needed over the next 20 years. And, hopefully, as we go, we'll see a larger share of that coming from fundraising activities. Obviously, that's ideal.
Past when things like really doing except for this last couple we had. For that, fire department pretty much purchased all of these. Half-ton truck with 3/4-ton truck now we have, and the boat, the fire department.
Yes, and I didn't even include the boat and the 3/4-ton truck in this
Yeah.
analysis, but obviously there is an opportunity over time to assess how far that is going and moderate rate projections accordingly. So if there's great fundraising revenue coming in, then that's obviously a lower rate to be charged. We do need to keep in mind that the times are a little bit difficult for inflationary pressures on one side are not likely to be kept pace with by similar increases in fundraising capacity. I mean, it's unlikely we can keep up with rising inflation, unfortunately.
You also have to look at it, that the fire department still has to pay for the community all part of the fire.
Yes, yes, so when that's done, then that portion of revenue in this 10 years from now
Yeah.
can become devoted to vehicle purchasing. And presumably there'll be a renegotiation of the expectations around reserve contributions ahead of that time. Yes, thank you, Richard, that's a very good point.
The next council meeting is the 24th.
Oh,
25th.
yeah.
25th. And I assume that this is on the agenda for a decision from council.
Well, it would be council to defer this to that meeting, like you do that now, and then it will be. Same staff report will be on.
Fair enough.
I don't see any particular useful purpose in delaying till next week. So I'd be prepared to make the motions now. Although I would like to preamble it by saying that these guys made such a compelling case for the utility of this vehicle. I don't understand why it wasn't in the budget. Having said that. Council, I'd like to move the council approve the allocation of $425,000 for the purchase of an aerial truck for the Mahone Bay and District Fire Department and direct staff to proceed with proposed aerial truck purchase and approve the transfer of funds as needed to cover the purchase of the truck from another reserve asterisk to be specified to the fire department reserve to be paid back from the fire department reserve and the disposal of the other vehicle when sufficient balance is reached.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Carver.
So hopefully we can get a friendly amendment on the floor now of which reserve. So I wasn't quite ready for you to jump in with that, but maybe we could talk about which reserve. Because I would like the motion to specify which reserve, but I'm happy to bring up.
Able to,
projected balances.
I'd move that we draw upon the existing cemetery reserve. Cemetery
Proposing an
division,
amendment?
well, as a source of interim financing until the budget deliberations happen in April.
Yeah, so if that works as a friendly
Happy to.
amendment to.
Okay.
So I'm not planning on using it immediately.
And then based on the budgets, I'm not sure if we need. So cemetery, so perpetual care fund, and any remaining requirements to come out of the capital reserve.
Yeah, so there's two perpetual care funds, but I think
But,
I just say
well,
the
but-
cemetery perpetual care.
But
Yeah, so they. Yeah, it'll be right on the line, so I think if you say and any for
Two-
capital,
200.
yeah, they're about 200, so it'll,
Yeah.
yeah. And so if everybody's comfortable with the motion saying, here, I'll bring it back up so I can put it. Yes, just add in the cemetery credit, I'm sorry. I don't
So as
know.
approve the transfer of funds as needed to cover the purchase of the aerial truck from the perpetual care fund to the fire department corporate reserve.
From the perpetual care fund with any overage to be funded from the capital reserve.
Okay.
That would be.
Well,
yeah.
we're also selling a truck for $200,000, right?
Well, yeah, but
This
that
is
we
just-
won't have the money in time.
this is just the
cash.
cash fund.
Just to get a hold.
But that's a good, so, and there's nothing in the motion about interest with the short-term loan,
Yes.
perpetual care often gets a little interest, but in this case, we're good with not getting it. Okay.
I'm happy.
Okay. Heard the motion as amended. On the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you to the truck committee for all the work that you've put into this.
Thank you guys very much.
For all support.
I want to ride in the bucket.
Thank the big council for driving the truck.
Yeah.
Because
Kelly's the first one to go to window.
In my
You guys, information. All with the broker and, important folks. We're supposed to keep posted over the next couple days. Get that ready now.
Now, the question, do you want me to do anything as far as getting this, starting the sale of the other one?
I think we can take a couple days, but once we get those details, yeah, we don't need to wait any longer than signing the sale on it.
Yeah, I've got everything done up for it, it's just a matter of getting permission from you guys to say. post it.
Anything else?
Thank you very much for your support. Very much appreciate it.
You and your
Well, you guys
deserve our support. Seth. Okay, our agenda, I believe, is concluded. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you to the people at home that have joined.
We didn't have any questions.
And thank you to Joseph as well.
Do we have any follow-up?
The reason I didn't see that